Hello everyone and welcome to the Deep Blue Renegade podcast. My name is Molly, also known as the Deep Blue Renegade, and I'd like to welcome you guys to episode 326. Today is Saturday, July 18th, 2020, and I'm glad you could join me today. This may be ill-fated. What would it be? I waited a little bit long for recording today, and so we are now in the sunshine portion of the day. Where perhaps no matter where I go in this, I don't know, or I would have to move a whole lot of furniture in this room before I could manage to avoid the sunshine, and yeah. Oh well, I tried. But what would it be? It'd be the case where the sun from yonder window, it may be blocked by the fog, but it's a little bit sunny right now. So, what would it be? I'll hang out here for at least a little bit. So we'll see how it goes. What would it be? We managed to give away a piece of furniture that wasn't serving either of us anymore, and so this meant I could reconfigure the room a little bit, but I will have to do a bit more before it really makes sense. And the room is in a bit of a state of destruction because that missing IKEA screw was important and did need to be installed. So the bed is slightly a mess right now because the mattress is off because we need to get in there in order to attach a little machine screw and a nut. I guess that would technically be a bolt. So a bolt is something that you put a nut on, and a screw is something which you don't. Oh well, such is life. So the lighting might be a little funny and whatever. It's not like it's the end of the world. But this particular view gives a little bit more of the yarn, so maybe that's not all bad. And I may need to slowly rotate things around in the room until something makes sense. Because I suppose if I wanted to keep my yarn out of the sun on purpose, I probably need to put it in a different place in the room. And where that sun hits, I think, is actually a function of what season we're in. So the safest place might be directly across from the window, bizarrely. I don't know. We'll see. I'll gently move things around until it starts making sense. And this was just a rough first pass so that I could get going. And obviously I've need to make better choices. But where I was sitting before has like a solid 2 hours in direct sun, which always seems to occur when I'm on a video call with the various groups that I'm participating in online. So, or what was it? So it was the case where I cut last week's episode short because my dad actually came to visit this weekend, or rather, we rescued him from Tracy, California. So, what was it? When the option was stay in a hotel room or stay with us, it was like, so we ended up bringing him here. And whatever, had a very nice chill weekend with him, which was nice. And I was so rushed because I wanted to get in before he showed up that I like forgot stuff. And I was like so hiding back in the shadow, like you can see. So much sunshine. I think technically speaking, my yarn is out of the direct sun, but so today was a lot of time actually spent participating in the SSK virtual market. So SSK 2020 was postponed till 2021. And I was on the wait list, but at the time was definitely contemplating like a visit out to my parents. They live about an hour north of Nashville, roughly speaking. So it's always a really good excuse to go to SSK, because then I can combine a trip to see them. So I was definitely contemplating flying out anyways, no matter what, and just using it as vacation time, and going to visit the market and hang out with like Tara, Worcestergate, and whatever, do that sort of thing. But it wasn't to be, and so I ended up participating in the virtual marketplace. So there's a bunch of videos for participating vendors, and they're whatever. Roughly speaking, all of them are less than 15 minutes, and it's just sort of an opportunity to see what sort of things they would have brought to the market. And then somewhere in the video, except for maybe 2 of them, there is a code word, so you can enter that into their website on the supersummerknittogether.com, fill in at least 5, and you'll be entered into a drawing for a lot of fabulous prizes. So I tried to collect them all, but I'm pretty sure 2 of them didn't have words. Whatever, such is life. I couldn't find it on website, or, well, maybe there were 3 of them I could find, but whatever. So, no big deal. So what I ended up doing was going through all those different videos and sort of treating it like the market, where whatever, you run around, you do that first pass, you think about the things that you remembered about it that were interesting items. And go from there. So, what was it? So hopefully in a couple of weeks I'll be able to show the neat things I ended up getting. So, not too crazy there. Definitely the case where it would have been nicer to just be in person, but oh well, such is life. So, let's see. All my bits and pieces. So, one thing that I ended up forgetting to do before hitting the record button, and actually I did that out of order as well. This is gonna be a little tight. Okay. We'll zero that out, but I figured it was probably about time to weigh the shawl. Okay. So, it looks like I got 2 grams done since I talked to you, or whatever, since I weighed it last. But I'm at 83 grams remaining on my Sizzle Pop shawl. So this is a Leslie Ann Robinson pattern that I'm knitting out of Smutsrella yarn in the You Can Never Keep Me Down. Ooh, that's blown. And You Can Never Have Enough Socks. I bring it closer? Oh, you can really see the purple there now. Oh well. It happens. So, there we go. I don't know. The light is what it is. So I did about a repeat this week. It looks like I had just started another repeat. Actually, I have like probably the easy pearl back row to go, but it was about half a repeat this week. I stopped at a weird place last week, and so whatever. It wasn't a nice even half this time, but that's no big deal. Life continues on. But slow and steady progress here. So I'm definitely, or whatever, I'm on the home stretch of this project. I'm going to be working on it for another month, and then about another month, and then casting off. So however far I get is how I get. And it's already like a pretty monstrous shawl going on here. So this guy's going to be nice and big. So enjoying the knit. I got my typical amount done for the week. It must be escalating since the rows are getting longer and longer. But yeah, no, and I'm assuming this probably will end up getting a lot more work on it, just because I think that this is going to be the only knitting project that I end up finishing in the near term. Because I lost my mind. I must have been like totally unsupervised. Well, I shared with the Thursday night knitters my plan, and I think they were all a little bit hurt because, yeah. So on Sunday, I cast on again for my Mesa sweater wrap. And you'll be like, but weren't you 1/3 of the way through that? Yes. And then you'd be like, didn't you like how the sleeves turned out? Yeah. But I like stopped in the middle of a row because I realized that I wasn't happy with some of the choices I made on the project. And the only way that I was going to be able to rectify those choices was to start over again. So I haven't ripped out. I haven't ripped out the original. It's all here, like middle of row. Maybe you can actually see. I don't know. That's pretty blown out. But you can see I have my little sleeves going on here. But there are a couple of things that, knowing what I know now, I would do differently. One thing is that this color that I started with is supposed to be purple, but looks teal. I don't know if this, I'm not sure why. And it definitely, like, yeah, no, it's really weird. I don't know why it ended up turning out that color. But this is like the main one that would be framing my face, and it's definitely not my favorite color of the entire gradient, so it didn't make a lot of sense for it to be the main color. The other thing was that I made some modifications to the pattern because I thought I was going to run out of yarn. And so I made these modifications, and I didn't need to. The way that the pattern is written, it was totally unnecessary to do. So what this means is that if I was going to end up starting again, or what would it be? Like, I proved everything out that I needed to prove out, though I would have preferred not to have knit 1,000 yards of it before deciding differently. And actually, that is the wrong side. But so I was able to prove out a lot of things. That meant that yes, I did actually want this sweater. Yes, I did like how the colors were working together, but that I wanted to start with a different color that I liked more, and that I could use my yarn in it. I could manage the transitions between the yarn like in a more intelligent way. So that is what's going on here, is that I can verify that how that transition is going to work out fine, because I ended up cutting off this section a little bit early, which then meant that this one was a lot of colors, which then sort of shifted. It made it sort of uneven for this guy. And so it was just sort of the case where the yarn management wasn't quite right. So I have very quantified amounts of yarn so I can actually adjust how my transitions fall depending on if it was a heavy part of the skein or not. So this guy here is one of the bigger ones of the project, and so I'll be able to work up this one and the next one in the color sequence before I decide that I want to rip. Because I think at that point then I will need to break into one of the teal ones. So in this case it's going from purple, purple, blue, 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 purple, blue, 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 and then it's going into blue, blue, teal. And I'll be able from here, starting with teal, 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 go to teal, teal, blue, and then my teals and blues are all going to be front loaded on the top of the sweater, and then the purples will be on the bottom. And I think I'm just going to like that a lot more because then it's actually going more rainbow order of green, blue, purple than sort of randomly in the middle where this ended up being. Like, this is the problem of a circular gradient, is that you could quite literally start anywhere. But I just am feeling a lot happier and a lot more motivated about the project. And I think that's the point, right? Is that what would it be? In some ways, I had stalled out a little bit, though part of that also had to be with the fact that you just have to accept the fact that it will not count for stash dash at all. Or would it be like can't be greedy in that way, you know what I mean? Like it's just not gonna go. So so the hilarious thing about it is that like I'm so jazzed about it now that I've like figured out the logic of the pattern and how I'm going to precisely implement it, and I'm starting with a color that I feel like will look really, really great next to my face. And that very clearly is the color it's supposed to be. That, like, I really want to work on it, and it won't count for points. So, on one hand, it was like, oh crap, like all of that work thrown away, at least for the imaginary points competition. But I think it's the right design choice. I think that is the thing that is going to really showcase what's going on with this. What would it be? And sort of prioritizes everything in the project. So, like, so I'm excited, but yeah, no, I'm not getting the imaginary points for this, or whatever. I'm not getting the imaginary points for this unless this project lingers until next year. But I hope not. Like, there are other sweaters that I want to make. I'm just feel it, or would it be the case where definitely feeling the hand spun this year, and definitely regretting packing a lot of it away, and wanting to make sure that I take my knitting time to actually use it and incorporate it and things. Would it be, and if I'm not going to use it and incorporate it in things, being able to gift it. So that's sort of where my thought process is at the moment. So I was able to send a package to one of my friends. It was the case where I was like, okay, here's this bag. And then it was the case where I just like pulled out all of my shawls and picked out two that I hadn't been wearing a lot that I knew came in colors she liked. And then I pulled out my hand spun, and I pulled out a skein that was very unlike her normal spinning style. I was like, yeah, no, this feels good. This feels nice to share this with whatever, to share this with a friend. But yeah. Start over. So whatever, this is maybe 1 or 2 inches of knitting at this point, but I am very excited about where this is heading and how this is going to turn out, so we're just gonna roll with it. And I could sit here knitting on the screen probably for quite some time. Not necessary, but so I managed, like, whatever, I was like looking at the clock, is like, should I watch another podcast while I try to like get things to a finished state, or just go record, because it was almost going to be the time of awkward light. Whatever. Such is life. So that's the story there. So this is Mesa Sweater Wrap, which is a Remy Hill pattern that I am knitting out of my hand-spun Ginny the Fleece yarn in whatever, a 9-skein circular gradient of love, joy, and happiness that I am very excited is going to be working for me a lot better now. So, not too crazy things, but you know, this is what you get when you leave me unsupervised. I'm up to no good. So I'll have to see whether or not there's some way of making this count for different knit-alongs that are happening. What would it be? One thing that's actually going on right now is something called the Bay Area Fiber Fair. And it is a challenge put together by various local yarn shops and dyers and designers in the San Francisco Bay Area, but anyone can participate. So it's happening on Instagram, there are weekly prizes, there are oodles and oodles of prompts. You don't need to buy anything to enter. I haven't had a chance to sit down and try to figure out if there was a way of making it work, or a way of making what I'm already doing work, because that's a lot of the way, that's a lot of how I participate in knit-alongs. Is this going to work with what I'm already doing? So I was in such a rush last week that I totally forgot to talk about this. So the last time that you saw this, it was dark brown. And so this sort of came off of whatever discussions that Kimber of Fiber Optic ended up sharing. So she ended up writing an article about color fastness in acid dyed yarn. One of the things that she wanted to emphasize was that if you wash your yarn in an acidic environment, it's not going to bleed, because that's going to encourage the dye to remain bonded to your fiber. And the corollary to this was that this fiber was originally shades of red, orange, brown, and yellow. And then what I ended up doing was combing it into nests, and that ended up sort of averaging things into like sort of a orangey brown color. I spun the yarn, decided that I wasn't super duper jazzed about the color, and then tried dyeing it blue. And what ended up happening was that blue ended up shifting the colors to a dark brown instead. I was maybe hoping for like purple, or no. And then even like every single time I wash it, there was like dye coming off it, and it was just like sort of, it was a hot mess. So what I ended up doing was like I had this wild hair. I'm like, so if acid and heat is going to make dye bind to fiber, base and heat is going to make it let go. So what I ended up doing was I removed most of the dye in this fiber. So what I ended up doing was I just took like a, I don't know, somewhere between a teaspoon and tablespoon of baking soda, put it in my dye pot, and then put this yarn into it. And what ended up happening was it ended up shedding a lot of the brown and green and yellow colors that were a part of what was making it that dark chocolate brown. There was also a lot of the teal and blue came out of it as well. So, and then what I ended up doing was basically after that first hit of baking soda, I just kept dumping all the excess dye out of the sink because it was not a color that I liked. What would it be? It was very interesting to look and see what was coming out of it. I ended up, so after that initially with baking soda, then I just kept putting it in water basically almost like as a hot rinse. So I would, so it was the case where after that initial baking soda, then I put in water, got it hot again, put the yarn back in, had a bunch of dye come out, take the yarn out, dump the dye, the dye liquor that came off of it, put more water in, until I finally got to the point where it was sort of like at an equilibrium. And then from there, I knew that I needed to get this back into an acid environment. So what I ended up doing was then taking citric acid, because that's my preferred on-hand acid. The Dear Sweet Lovable one keeps acid because he needs to remove calcium carbonate from all of his aquarium-related stuff. So took a generous amount of citric acid, put it in the pot, put the yarn in, and then I ended up taking, because I was afraid if I tried to make it blue again that it might turn out to be that awful brown. That was probably, I probably could have shifted it brown based on how much dye I was able to remove from this. But it was definitely the case where it was probably, it was sort of like a sandy brown color once I was done with probably some bits that were sort of more on the hot pink end. I don't know. I'm not sure whether or not you'll be able to see what's going on there. But, so I just took that entire stupid container of pink food coloring, red number 1, dumped it in the pot, put the yarn in, and then it did its magic. So this is tonal. It no longer has sort of that dyed-in-the-wool look that it started off with. Definitely the case where it's sort of solidifying my opinion that I really do like and prefer working with or spinning stuff that has been dyed in the wool, just because I really like how that ends up turning out. It's like mildly sticking to itself a little bit because it was a fairly intense little process, but it's what would it be? It seems like the twist relaxed in it from the process. But it doesn't appear that I ended up screwing it up, or if I did screw it up, it wasn't too badly. So one thing that'll be good to do is actually just to rewind this game. But, no. So it looked like maraschino cherry red when it was wet. It's a little bit lighter now, so there's some portions that sort of have more of that sandy look to them of what it used to be. I don't know, we're in a spot where, yeah, I don't know, the light The light is not going to cooperate with me today. But there's some of it that's still maybe a little bit of that sandy color I managed to shift it to by removing the dye. But yeah, no, overall it's it is a cheerful pink. So definitely a lot more my jam than the chocolate brown it was before. So definitely a very interesting thing to do. What would it be? Just because it was the case where I was like, this is not, like, it was, like, I knew I didn't have that much to lose. A, because I had originally gotten this fiber for free, and B, I wasn't going to use it as it was, so if I just totally trashed it, it wasn't going to be the end of the world. So this is 11 ounces of what I think is Shetland wool that I spun for Spin the Bin last year. And now it is a color that I like more, which is cool. So the only thing is there's definitely sections that have very interesting little curly cues in them, and I don't know if that's what's going on there entirely, but what would it be? But what would it be? It's now a much more fun color. It's definitely tonal, and what would it be? It'll be interesting to see what this eventually becomes. But I just wanted to share that with you guys because I hadn't ever seen people do that before, and I just thought it was. I figured that it was possible, so that was fun. And now I can put this back in its bag and call it good. I also have the Corriedale that Gia gave me in here, which hopefully will become something cool at some point. Yeah, no, it still smells like machine oil. Oh well. But I did want to share with you guys just because I thought it was cool. Yeah, this bag is dead. It's not gonna hold my yarn anymore. I tried. Oh well, sometimes you can't win them all. So that was sort of like hand-spun dyeing. Doesn't normally have it doesn't have a normal home on the podcast, so I have been working pretty diligently on my Spin the Bin fiber. I don't feel like where did I go? Okay, somewhere's the other bobbin, but I'm not seeing it. In and around me. I definitely brought it in here, but whatever. There's been a lot of shifting and moving in here. It's possible that, I don't know, whatever. So I have been working on fiber from Nest Fiber Studio. This is a BFL Tussa Silk in the Maiden's Wish colorway. And this is actually the last 10 grams of this bin. So it was my hope that I would be done with the singles 4 days ago. But that is not the reality of the situation. So, but I probably will be finished with the singles today. And so I'm definitely, at this point, I'm definitely leaning towards making the 2x3 cable yarn, just because I think it'll end up being really, really gorgeous. So, what would it be? And what I'm working on right now is the fractal portion. So I have a little bit more than, yeah, I have about 2 color repeats left to go on this last little bit. And then I'll be done with the singles, which will be really exciting. This is a project that I'm doing for a couple of different challenges. One of them is Stash Dash. I haven't technically finished anything since the last time I updated you on the yardage. I'm doing this as a part of the Fun Onion Challenge for True to Fleece. So this is my Ride to Spin project, which is spinning something based on a country you don't have heritage in. And this is representing Great Britain because the colorway is based off of Terry Pratchett, a British writer. It has blue-faced Leicester in it, which is a British breed of sheep, and all of this fun stuff. I'm doing this as a part of the Feather Your Nest Challenge, which is a challenge where you spin at least 4 ounces of fiber every month for a quarter. And this is a part of the summer quarter, so July, August, and September I'll be having nest projects because a lot of my fiber stash is nest. What would it be? This is yarn that I ended up getting that was a part of the Mega Cell, which was a spin along that happened in 2015. And what would it be? I did buy 4 ounces of fiber for the Mega Cell and spin it during the time, but this is an opportunity, or this fiber came up on D-Stash. It's a colorway that I absolutely adored, so I was glad to finally have a chance to work it up. And because of that, there were tons and tons of examples of seeing it worked up, so I was able to pick a way to spin it that I think would really highlight the colors very well. What would it be? Because it'd be the case, a 3-ply ended up blending it a little bit too much. I didn't like it as singles at all. But that I definitely liked the fractal versions of it and the chain-plied versions of it. So this is sort of a hybrid of the two. So it will iron out some of the inconsistencies by 2-plying it, but then I'll chain-ply it as the final plying step. So it should be really cool. I'm really excited about what's going to happen. And I will do a quick sample before I really commit to doing that all the way. But I'll be able to do that really soon because I'll be done with the singles and I'll be able to actually see. I was hoping I could finish spinning this, but I realized, what would it be? I was sort of working at a cadence where I was able to do about ½ an ounce a night, but not every night did I manage to get that much done. And even when I had like the full day to spin, it only ever seemed to be ½ an ounce, so whatever, oh well. But I'm hauling on this project because that deadline for the Feather Your Nest Challenge is pretty tight. Definitely for 8 ounces of spinning. But oh well, such is life. And the last challenge is that this is actually my last fiber for the Spin the Bin. So this is a challenge I take part in Completely Twisted and Arbitrary. And so you declare at least 24 ounces of fiber that you'll be spinning throughout the year. And I've been sort of using it as a challenge to sort of shake up how I'm using my fiber stash. And this is the first time that I'm going to be done so early. Normally I'm frantically plying on the 31st of December. Instead I'll be frantically plying on the 31st of July. But I'm a little bummed that I don't know where the other bobbin is in the room at the moment, because I want to contrast how different these 2 different blades are, but whatever. Not too much I can do about it now. It's probably hiding somewhere, but driving me only slightly nuts. Whatever. So what's interesting about this bobbin is that the colors are much more warm than the other braid. So it's going to be interesting to do the 2-ply of this, just because what would it be? It'd be the case where these greens have a lot more yellow in them. And I think that the magentas in this braid are actually more bright and less dark than, or would it be? So it'd be the case where the greens are whiter in the first braid I spun, and the magentas are sort of warmer and brighter in this second braid. So very interesting. What would it be? There was the only other way that or the third way that I didn't end up doing with this project was actually to take the fibers, break them into their component colors, and then spin separate skeins of each, which I probably would have done with the drum carder, because drum card all of the things. But what would it be? So that would have been a situation in which I maybe would have been able to blend the cooler and warmer things together in order to create something, but too late now. Can't go back. Whatever. It's okay. And what would it be? It'd be the case where some of this is actually sort of on that sort of very, very pale end of things, but not all of it. So, no big deal. So I'm spinning this on my Lendrum. I'm spending a lot of time doing it, but what would it be? I don't think I'm hopeless yet. But what would it be? I guess I have to laugh a little bit about all of my various timetables of finishing things that never seem to work out. Whatever. I guess my neighbor's having a bad day. So, yeah, no, it's going to be interesting. So almost there. 2 more color repeats. Shouldn't be too crazy. And then onto the plying. So I'm hopefully I'll be able to start plying tomorrow. And obviously this is super duper gorgeous. What would it be? Maybe going back to sort of the common theme of me having the same colors over and over again, of sort of that blue, green, purple triad of various cool colors, as you do. So, what would we? And that'll keep me pretty occupied, I believe, for the rest of the month. I do have my blue project that's on hold until I can get back to it. And that's going to be the main color for a hinterland sweater. And then in August, I will start my contrast color spin for the hinterland sweater. So, like, I guess that I can bring this up now. So, it's very interesting when, what would it be? It'd be the case where there are certain things where, like, as someone in the fiber community, you're like, wow, that is gorgeous, and then you look at the price and you're like, never mind. And that's sort of what I was planning to do with that, or with my August spin, was like, wow, spin cycle is gorgeous, there's some beautiful projects you can make it, but no thanks, I'm a spinner, I can make my own dyed-in-the-wool yarn. And like, coming from a place where, what would it be, like, dual income, no kids household, like, I could afford it. But what would it be? I choose not to go that path. And I think that can be a choice that everyone can make as an editor. Be like, hey, it's gorgeous, but probably not a value in your eyes, and that value is going to depend person to person. But someone in my local knit group ended up, I guess, poking the bear, which was questioning, like, hey, like, in my size, it's going to cost $400 or whatever, like $376 to knit the latest Andrea Mowry design in the called for yarns. And what would it be like? It's pretty ridiculous, right? And so, but it ended up sort of exposing sort of like what makes the capitalism behind the yarn business run, which is that yarn dyers looking for exposure work with designers who are willing to exclusively use their content to make beautiful patterns, and these beautiful patterns sell their beautiful yarn. But then when you step back and you're like, holy guacamole, like, that is a lot of money to do that. And so it was the case where she was just pointing out, like, hey, it would be more inclusive if you also mentioned, what would it be, other yarns to use. But like the backlash that she has faced because, what would it be, she sort of questioned the underlying business model. You know what I mean? It'd be the case where, what would it be? Like, it, like, capitalism came out to get her. It was like, shit. But what would it be? It, like, it's just very, very interesting to think of. It was like me, I'm pretty comfortable substituting yarn, figuring out things that work, figuring out ways to recreate yarns that I would like to use, like, and ways, or what would it be? And it'd be the case where I think a lot of the classes that I've attended and the teachers I've learned from have been like, take control of the process. Because you'll be able to create something much more wonderful and complicated on your own, well, owning it all, basically. So, I don't know, it's, and I'm like, frankly, in some ways, I guess I'm disappointed that it turned out that there was so much backlash, because it wasn't the case of no, this isn't beautiful, no, you shouldn't buy indie dyed yarn, no, you shouldn't pay the extra premium for some of these things, but instead being like, hey, very few of us can afford this, is there another way? And what would it be? I think it was just very interesting because of the backlash. But what would it be? Not everyone, or what would it be? Not everyone can circumvent it. What would it be? Because like the spinning wheel is a pretty expensive tool. Like, it, what would it be? No fiber tool that I've ever bought is gonna pay itself back. What would it be? There is, what would it be? Like, if I decided to sell my hand-spun yarn because I'm making it faster than I'm using it, there really isn't a way to compensate my time in a way that's fair for the effort that went into making it. So it's a very interesting sort of thought process, or just the fact that sweaters are on the borderline between, what would it be, on the border between how much it takes in raw materials is finally cheaper than just buying one off the rack. Socks are definitely not there. So, I don't know, it's just something interesting to think about. I don't know if you guys want to discuss anything about it in the comments section for this video, but I just found it to be very, or what would it be? On one hand, it is I think very, very challenging sort of position for designers and dyers and companies and consumers within the industry. Because I think it then just sort of, or because it exposed like how it is that they're driving demand in their community and questioning whether or not that even makes sense. Another person who's local to me who has some very interesting thoughts about that is Anne of Little Skane. And so she's had some very interesting discussions about how she's going about running her business and how she goes about marketing herself in order to be inclusive. So that might be a very good place to look. And it's also entertaining because she is like smack dab in the middle. Would it be because she personally knows most of the people who are going out at on Instagram. So, I don't know. But interesting things to think about for sure. And whatever. Perhaps this is something you don't even want to discuss at all, and that's totally fine too. Would it be another thing that I wanted to touch back in on was would it be? It'd be the case where what I've been doing lately to help diversify my feed. On one hand, it's been very interesting by sort of switching up what sort of like knitting podcasts I'm following and how YouTube is starting to serve me very different ads. I don't know if this is the case where other people have opened up their marketing budgets, but for a while there, it was a little bit of a monoculture. So it'd be the case where two podcasts which I've recently subscribed to, I mentioned this one before, but Hey Brownberry. So she actually recently put out a new episode. I don't know, she's pretty sporadic, so what would it be? It doesn't take quite a lot to give her a follow. And then Gigi, who is of Gigi Made It as well. So, and then another podcast that I'm following is Caleb Nets. So that would be the case of, or would it be? So Gigi and Mars are black makers. Caleb is whatever, LGBTQ plus, and would it be another one that I'm following is Emmanuel Echo, and that isn't actually knitting related, but he's behind Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man, and I've found his videos to be, so he comes out with videos every week, and then he sort of has like a midweek update with some of the extra footage, and they're pretty short videos, but then just have sort of a variety of anti-racist topics to look into. So, interesting things there. And then another podcast that I started following, and I guess it'll be interesting to see how regular they are. I'd noticed when I hit subscribe that it wasn't super regular, but Jill and Nick of Hip Strings, I also gave them a follow as well. So, not too crazy. And I think another thing which I found to be interesting, or something I saw floating around Instagram, was like, why is it that you're watching something you've already watched before? And they had mentioned that when you're feeling anxious, it's sometimes nice to know what's already going to happen, and that can be comforting. sort of like whatever, in these uncertain times of pandemic. So I've been rewatching Amy Beth of the Fat Squirrel, and it has been bringing me much joy. Just because I think there is the connection with living in Indiana at the same time during the first couple years of her podcast and knowing what she's talking about when she's talking about it. But then also other places where our lives have intersected as well. And I really like that she brings up topics that are more broad than just the fiber community itself. So I really appreciate that as a part of her thing, just because it's interesting to see her take on the world. And also very interesting to see sort of how she has learned and grown over the years as well. So, what would it be? Because whatever, there are some things where you're like, ooh, probably wouldn't do that now. So, interesting things, and definitely a lot of comfort there. And at this point, like, I've forgotten all of the things she's worked on and all of the previous things she's talked about. So it's just been nice to revisit that. Would it be? It's something that gives me energy instead of takes energy away. And I think the other thing that I ended up doing, just sort of to, or what would it be? Because I would like, whatever. Definitely notice when I have like good days and bad days, and what's like I'm doing something that's completely draining me, or I'm doing something and I'm excited and energized afterwards. It was definitely the case where like some of the stupid ads on YouTube where they're serving you like masterclass ads, and every single one looks so good. One of them was actually Thomas Keller. And if you didn't know, Thomas Keller has two very famous restaurants, one of them in New York called Per Se, and another one that's in, I believe, Napa Valley, which is called the French Laundry. And totally texted my friend from high school, or I totally texted my best friend from high school, and I'm like, when you can come here, you come here, and we're gonna go there. It's like I want like open invitation as soon as you can. Please come, and we'll do that together. And like technically speaking, the French Laundry is open right now, but it's not fair or smart to go there. And honestly, I need to go with someone who would really appreciate it. And well, that's my best friend from high school. So, what would it be? It's like, love my husband, but that is not his thing. That is like orders of magnitude not his thing. But like, I needed to make this plan. Because what would it be? Like feeling the hope for the future that everything's going to turn out all right. So, with that, because I'm almost out of time, I made an hour, who knows? With that, I hope you guys have a lovely week, and I look forward to talking to you guys next week. So, take care, guys. Bye-bye.